Right, and I'll just give it a few more seconds and we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining me today. It's a great pleasure to present this project. I think it's one of the great joys of being a marketing professor or studying or working in marketing is that kind of everything needs marketing, and so you can study whatever topics that seem important to you. And today I'm going to be talking about gauging the impact of video game influencers. First of all, I think we can all say that influencer marketing has taken off massively. So many firms are starting to make influencer marketing a much larger portion of their spending. We've seen the rise of influencers, previously through YouTube, but most recently through TikTok or Twitter, where an individual person is specifically interacting with a product. And firms, this is something new to firms, to engage with a specific individual like this and have that engage with the audience. So it's definitely something we were interested in studying. This is joint work with Mitch Lovett, who you may have seen in a previous Quick Takes, and Nan Lee, who was formerly a PhD student here and now a faculty. So this project is specifically about influencer marketing of video games on YouTube. And that might sound like it has a few qualifiers. That seems like it might be pretty specific. But this is actually just an absolutely massive industry. It's hard to understate it. To give you a context, YouTube is the second most popular search engine in the world. Google, of course, is number one, but YouTube is the number two search engine in the world. And, if you actually look at how humans spend their time, on like a pie chart, if you were going to do a pie chart of 24 hours in a day, you watching videos on YouTube would be several minutes of that pie chart. So I think we understand YouTube is pretty important. What you might not know is that video games are a huge part of YouTube, okay? That is, a third of the content that is watched on YouTube is about people playing video games. This might be less surprising to those who interact with, teenagers or kids these days who spend a lot of time watching people on YouTube essentially play video games. It may be surprising to some. Why not just play the game yourself? Well, I could play basketball myself, but sometimes it's fun to watch someone else play basketball as well. What's most interesting about this question is that, about this industry, is that you have a huge amount of value essentially being generated for YouTube and also for these influencers, for these people who post these videos. Lots of money is being made, but neither YouTube nor the influencer themselves actually own the rights to these videos. Okay. That is to say that the person who actually owns the rights to these things are video game developers. So for example, if you post a video about a Mario game on YouTube, Nintendo can say, actually, you have to take that down. Nintendo can even say, actually, I'm going to take all the ad revenue that you earn from that video. So a very big question, both from a video game developer point of view, but also just like a broader question is it good for firms to allow influencers to essentially use their products for free? Does Nintendo see a benefit when someone plays their video game online and streams that process? So to answer this, we collected a data set that's actually unique within academia. This is a data set for anyone familiar with video games. It's from a platform called Steam. It's the largest place for games on a computer. And what was unique about the Steam platform at the time was that people's profiles were by default public. So, and even mine was. So you could go to someone's Steam profile and it would tell you what games they own and how much they've been playing those games. And so what happens is, what we did was we found over 100,000 users that we sampled randomly from Steam. And my student, I got to give credit to Nan about this, he hit their personal profiles once every day. Every single day, refresh the page. And from that, we were able to back out, did you buy a game? And did you play the game? We think this data set has a lot of really interesting questions we can answer about it, because there aren't that many data sets out there that combine purchase, which is what we often see, and usage. Did you actually use the product? Especially in a competitive marketplace like this. What's especially great about this data for us is that you can't collect this data anymore. After GDPR came out in Europe, Steam defaulted all profiles to private, and so now you can't get a general sample of how people actually use these products. We're going to have some future work on this. I'm really excited to write a paper about why people buy products they don't use. And I always tell little jokes about this. I get that from me with video games. My wife has a habit of buying some very expensive kimonos, particularly wedding kimonos. She owns 6 of these wedding kimonos, and I'm her first husband. So I'm hoping those are products she doesn't use. So we linked this data to 78,000 videos on YouTube itself. So we have, how much are people playing and buying these games? And then we also see on YouTube, are top influencers making videos about these games over time? So, here's a sort of screenshot. This is just a few random games off of YouTube, but just to show you the scale of this, this is just one page of a few games. Just look at these view counts, I guess is what I'm saying. Five Nights at Freddy's, this is a game where, you kind of get scared. It's like going to a Chuck E. Cheese and it's a horror game and people can react to it. These are just random videos, 12 million views, 2.5 million views, 3.8 million views. These really get viewed quite a lot, and there's many people in this industry streaming many, many games. It's just a huge amount of human behavior that we're looking at. It's just a very, very small slice of what's going on. So, the 5 takeaways, if you were to read the blog post, first is video game influencers have a large and growing presence on YouTube. I think I recently just redid the math at that. The content is more than 100 billion hours. A very big number, 100 billion hours per year spent watching videos about video games, a third of YouTube's traffic. It's hard to understate, how big of an influence this is happening, particularly on younger generations. The study, and I'll get into the details of how we found this, but just imagine we do have that data on, when people buy games, when people play games, and we also have that data on when these videos were posted. On average, we see an increase in the usage and the sales on the day that a video is posted. We generally find that people use video games more, that they play more minutes per day when a video is posted. So, you see someone that you follow, they post a video about, let's say, oh, here's how you beat this level. You're more likely to go play that level yourself. But for many games, while the aggregate effect was positive here, for many games, it is negative on purchases. That is, there are some times when watching someone else play a game substitutes for you buying the game. Going back to the sports analogy, sometimes instead of playing basketball, I watch someone play basketball. This is easiest to imagine in a really plot or story-heavy game. If I watch someone else play through the entire game and I know the twist, I know the story, there's not much reason for me to necessarily play the game. So it is certainly plausible that there's this negative spillover, and in that case, maybe it's not such a great idea to let these influencers essentially have your content for free. Now, how did we get to this result? It's tricky. Okay, it was actually tricky. And the difficulty, you might think maybe, okay, you've got usage and you have when the video was posted, just correlate those two things. Well, the problem lies in, what if there is a really great event in a video game, right? And people want to post a video about that event or that patch or something like that. To give you an example that I'll come back to later, in Fortnite, they had a big Star Wars event, right? You could play as Darth Vader in this game, and actually some major plot points of the Star Wars franchise were only revealed within Fortnite. The problem is that on a day where there's a big event, you'd have a lot of videos made, and you'd have a lot of people playing the game. But it's not the videos that are causing people to play the game. It's the fact that there's this third cause. Okay, so that would be what, if you took my class, you'd call it omitted variable bias. All right, so just doing that correlation straight up probably overestimates the effect. What we need to study this question is a way to decouple those two things, to make it so we see the effect of the event first, and then maybe afterwards see the effect of the video. And something that happens in our data was a very significant event, had a huge effect on just how we process information and just the landscape of advertising, called adpocalypse. It's been the terminology. And it was actually started by this Wall Street Journal article that I've got on the side of the screen. So if you go back before 2017, the way brands advertised on YouTube is they would essentially go to YouTube and sometimes just say, hey, before a video is posted, just play our ad, and we'll have those advertisements essentially wherever. The issue was that brands do not want to be associated with all the content that is available on YouTube. And so Wall Street Journal pointed out that there were videos with racist or other objectionable content. Think like a Hezbollah recruitment video would have an ad for Pepsi running before it. And, Wall Street Journal is essentially asking, hey, is this an association that you really want to be making? These firms did not want that association to be happening, and they pulled out en masse from the platform. This had a few effects. First of all, it reduced the amount of compensation streamers were getting because, there's just fewer advertising dollars available. But the second thing is that YouTube had to be very careful to make sure that branded content was not being shown on objectionable videos. And so they designed an algorithm to try to detect whether a video was objectionable or not. And they tuned this video to be very aggressive, classifying things as objectionable, even if they might not be, because the risk was just too great. So what this meant was that if you are a video game influencer and you uploaded a video, the algorithm could determine that your content was objectionable. And what would happen then is your video would be demonetized. Demonetized meaning no advertisements would be shown on that video. Okay. Now, given that a lot of the revenue, a lot of the views for these videos happen really early in the right after being posted, people wouldn't have a chance to respond to it and would see most of the revenues generated from their videos just disappear. So what YouTube suggested to do, and what we actually in the paper have evidence of, is that people were encouraged to upload their video privately first, meaning that you would upload it to the platform, but people wouldn't be able to find it. And wait for the process to see if it would wait for a process to complete to see if it would get demonetized or not. And then if it was demonetized, you could appeal it, particularly if you had over 10,000 subscribers, triggering a manual review, and that would typically solve this problem. Why that's important for us, why that's significant for us, is that it decouples when a video can be made and when the patch or the event in the video game happens. That is to say if you've got that Fortnite Star Wars event, if someone wants to make money off of that video based on that Star Wars event, they have to wait a day or two to actually post that video and monetize it. So we see the effect of the event first happen in sales and usage, and then a day or two later, the videos come. And we actually have evidence of that in the paper, that you can actually see a change in how people are posting videos afterwards. Okay. So our results, we're trying to speak to, and we're just polishing the results up now, but one thing we have implications for is this notion of fair use. Fair use is this idea that you can use someone else's copyrighted material under certain conditions. And the most important of those conditions, according to the Supreme Court, is that you enhance demand for the original product. The most meaningful case, the most important case on fair use in recent memory is Google Books, right? That Google started scanning libraries of content and posting parts of them online. And book publishers were saying, hey, you're taking our stuff. Shouldn't we get money for that? It was ultimately ruled that, well, that helps people buy books, and therefore this qualifies as fair use. One argument, and it hasn't been established in court either way yet, is whether making a video about a video game should qualify as fair use. Is it right that Nintendo should be able to come in and say, that's our copyrighted content and you have to take that down? Well, big question is, does that enhance or reduce demand for Nintendo games? What we currently find is that it enhances demand for Nintendo games in aggregate, though there are some games that would see a negative spillover. Okay. Another area you can think about this fair use spillover that's coming up in a more recently is through OpenAI. OpenAI most recently just got sued by publishers, by authors like George R.R. Martin, saying your algorithm was trained on our books. And one argument OpenAI can make back is, yes, but that's going to qualify as fair use. Now, we see that the sales spillovers are sometimes positive and sometimes negative, but the usage spillovers are almost universally positive. So the thing that video games developers might need to do is change the nature of their business models such that they actually make money on usage. Back in the olden days, and anyone who plays video games over a good period knows about this, you would just sort of go to the store, you'd buy a game, you'd take it home, and all right, I just have the game. Nowadays, many games have lots of microtransactions wherein, if you're using the game, you might buy a little boost or a new outfit or a new bit of content that they've released, maybe like a new level, something like that. Video game developers that are able to monetize their content in this way should almost universally see a positive spillover, because we do see that when someone posts a video, usage goes up. To go back to the Fortnite example, and if you don't know about Fortnite, I haven't actually played it. I probably should as an academic. It's probably important that I do. But this took over America from like 2020 to 2022. It was the most popular search term in every state, I believe, for like 2 years. Okay, that's how big a deal it is. And Fortnite is a free-to-play game. You can download it and play the game and just have fun. The way they make money is primarily through selling costumes and dancing like this. You can see their currency. It's a little small here, but if you want to dress in the outfit in the middle, that costs 1,200 V-Bucks, and that transition, that costs about $10. So games that have ways to monetize their content in this way should generally see a positive effect from influencers, because that increases usage effects as a whole. And final results, and then I'll get to the questions that were already posted. And this was quite surprising to us. The content that was the best at driving demand was the least engaging content. The ideal video in terms of driving demand was one that got certainly lots of views, but did not see a lot of comments, did not see a lot of likes. And our story for this, we have a few stories for this. One is that when you are highly engaged with a creative piece of work like a video game, that is a better substitute for playing the game. Whereas if you have it on passively, then you don't really feel like you played it. So it's when you are really engaged with the content, it's closer to, say, watching your friend play it. And that gives you less reason to play it yourself. So we thought that was very surprising, because current targeting strategies and current recommendations say go for a very engaged audience. But perhaps it's better just to get to a channel that best exhibits the product and doesn't give people the full creative experience of playing the game. A second story is that, and we're not sure which of these two would apply, might have to do with search engine ranking. So highly engaging content might bump these videos up in terms of search engine rankings, either on YouTube or on Google. And that might crowd out the actual pages where one would go to buy the game. So now if I go search for a game on YouTube, perhaps instead of seeing a trailer for a game or something put out by the developer themselves, I'm now going to see something directly from an influencer instead. And that's less likely to lead to me converting to a purchase in the end. So a bit of a crowding out effect. Okay. So thanks so much. I just hit the 20 minutes there, so I'm gonna just look at the questions that have been posted. So question number one, Michael, how do you know video games are a third? Is that data public, and where? I've actually seen that posted in several locations. I believe the original source is, a YouTube fact sheet that got posted, and now has been quoted by sort of the infinite number of aggregation sites that exist. But yeah, I've seen that number many times. I think it initially comes from a YouTube fact sheet. So from Carol, for curiosity, what are the other two topics on YouTube, assuming gaming is third? I don't think it's not that gaming is third. It is a third. That is, it is 33%. The other top, I believe it is also the plurality. I'm not entirely sure about that fact exactly. I can tell you we did look at like music and sports, and those are well below 10% of YouTube. So, there is things other than gaming channels, like cooking channels or just general influencer stuff, but those are minorities. That split goes pretty far away. The least engaging content was most driving, aka if a marketing ad was uploaded, those typically won't drive comments, but if the marketer paid for eyeballs. So Michael, that's a good question. We separately looked at organic video posts and sponsored video posts, to the extent that they're labeled. We didn't find a big difference between those effects, but the vast majority, over 90% of the videos we're talking about, were contexts wherein someone was organically posting the video, so that's mainly what we can speak to. So it's not that a marketer necessarily paid for the eyeballs. What you see a little bit more often in these videos, maybe not for the majority of them, but they will have a direct sponsorship, not by the video game developer, but by some other company that typically advertises through YouTube. VPNs, loot box stuff, and those cooking. They send you the ingredients so you can cook. From an anonymous, so I'm just going to keep going there. From anonymous attendee, have video game companies begun to capitalize on this trend and hired users to post content? Absolutely, yes, they absolutely have. Again, that's about, in this period, it was less than 10% of our sample. But there is very clearly indicated content on both YouTube and Twitch, wherein people are posting that content. Usually there's some provision in there about what they're allowed to say about that content during those times, that you shouldn't like outright critique it. But this certainly exists. It's not clear whether that's actually how well that drives attention. Okay, so from Hermes, do you think free-to-play games are the future of the industry, especially because you can launch betas and keep working on them as people start playing? I think this is speculation, but I think both are going to have a role to play in the future. I think some games naturally are naturally more well suited to a free-to-play model, and some are not. Games where there's multiplayer games, for example, there's a lot more benefits to posting things that can typically be sold in a free-to-play game. So, when you think about a free-to-play game, what the typical stuff is appearance-oriented cosmetics. And those are much more popular in multiplayer games because people want to show off or they want to look good to other people. Whereas single-player games, I think that's going to be less common, in which case, you don't want to be giving away the full plot, let's say, of a story-driven game, driven game. So I think there you'll still see, a large fixed fee. Mobile is an entirely different situation. For mobile games, I think free-to-play games are the future, just because of the competitive landscape. And I can also tell you that in China, I know free-to-play games in the mobile market are a much, much bigger deal. Oh, and a question during registration. How do these trends change based on the platform? Do short form platforms like TikTok have a different impact than multi-hour streams on YouTube? What I can answer based on the data we have is that there was no significant interaction with length. That is to say, within the context of YouTube, TikTok wasn't around back then. Within the context of YouTube, we couldn't find a difference between a short video and a long video in terms of the impact it had on sales. What we could say was that getting on many channels was better than being on one channel multiple times. So a breadth strategy was better than a depth strategy in terms of, hitting, in terms of, drawing demand. Much better to get on multiple channels. So the first impression was much more valuable than the third, some diminishing returns. Shriram, what are the top areas of research for gaming companies in light of social media influencers? In other words, how is their game development influenced by their distribution influencer strategy? The ways what I can speak to on this is that I know that many game developers will rope in influencers or YouTubers to come try their products before launch and keep those conversations confidential. So in that case, they are valuing the opinion of these people because they have such a broad reach, but they're not publicizing that. So that's not part of the marketing. That is part of the development. So I think the feedback is definitely appreciated. I can also tell you that several games, more than several, there is a trend for games to explicitly include streamer modes. That can be as simple as changing your soundtrack. So some soundtracks contain copyrighted music. There will be a streamer mode that does not use the copyrighted music, so you can actually post that online. Otherwise, the people who make the music, who made the copyrighted song, can grab those royalties. It can also be that the game allows for explicit interaction between, the chat or the viewership and the person playing the game. That would apply more to live streamers. Yeah. These are great questions. I really appreciate the engagement, even if it does mean that apparently I'll have less of an effect. Okay, great. Well, the next step for this data, beyond this project, we do want to look at esports as a whole as a sort of, up and coming area. These are professionals, in fact, playing these games and the competition associated with them. We've actually scraped hundreds of games and their associated tournaments, and we're going to use a similar idea to look for the effect that these tournaments might have. And second of all, yeah, I've really wanted to answer this question about why people buy games they don't play. If you go to a typical Steam profile, you will see many games purchased and not once played. And it's an interesting phenomena. So we want to see what types of products people are doing this, and maybe just try to understand what drives people to engage in that sort of behavior. All right. Yeah. Thank you all for joining. It's been great. I hope to do this again in the future. One more. Does the data reflect the usage spillover? The usage spillover can benefit gaming companies' branding with increase in game purchases, subscriptions, advertising, and merchandise. Sean, that's exactly what we're thinking, right? That's the way the usage would be monetized. What we don't have access to is we don't know. We know we could collect whether the game had downloadable content available, but we don't know how much was spent on downloadable content. We know if people bought the game, but we don't know if people made in-game transactions. Those would not show on your Steam profile, so we can't go that far, unfortunately. That's the trade-off when working with data that is unique in that it contains many firms, right? The only people who might know that is Steam itself. Great. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk about my research, and yeah, hope to see you all again one day.